This year has had more than a few games that haven't lived up to our high expectations. With the brainchild from the legendary Keiji Inafune's team and the minds behind Metroid Prime arriving just last week, the question is, can it break this vicious cycle, or will it let us down like so many others? This is the Bombchu review for Recore. Recore's story takes place on the planet of Far Eden and places you in the role of the scavenger Joel. Far Eden was intended to be a replacement for the planet Earth should catastrophe occur. Early on, we discover that Joel's father sent her and a few other individuals to begin work on colonization. In addition, worker bots were sent to help maintain the facilities as well as proper function. Joel finds a prismatic core that she hears voices coming from and sets out to figure exactly what this thing is and what has caused these worker bots to go haywire. Far Eden is fairly beautiful to say the least, and we experienced everything from a calm desert background to a raging sandstorm. There are a few pre-rendered cutscenes that don't perform too well, but the in-engine visuals are pretty impressive. The game is mostly set in these sort of desert locales with a high-tech yet rustic feel throughout. The design of every enemy and character is very focused with lighting and effects in just the right places. Exploration is largely open world, with the areas being split between the expansive overworld and both story and optional dungeons that feel organic as you dive into them. Gameplay in Recore is probably the most polished you'll find in years. The jumping feels natural, and you're also given a dash that can be performed both in and out of the air. You cannot boost indefinitely, which makes walking around a bit of a long process due to the size of the world. When it comes to combat, Joel is armed with an energy rifle and her trusty grappling hook. The rifle can be used in fully auto mode or focused into a powerful charge shot. While in combat against the AWOL bots, some are armed with shields that can only be broken with the charge shot, allowing you to take them down with regular shooting afterwards. Instead of forcing you to aim down the sights, a lock-on system is used that lets you snap between enemies and focus more on evading. As the game progresses, enemies begin to appear in different color variations that each have a different effect. Blue enemies can stun, red can light things on fire, and yellow can stop you in your tracks. To counter these, your gun is also able to switch between colors, which will then do max damage as long as you align the colors correctly. Combat is basically an enhanced game of Simon in this regard, but it works fairly well. When you weaken an enemy enough, you are prompted to take its core, which triggers a game of tug-of-war between the robot and yourself. If you succeed, the bot is instantly dispatched and you gain its core, but if you fail, you're knocked back and take a bit of damage. There's a trade-off for this finisher, as any valuable materials they may have dropped are now gone, and instead you got the core. Both materials and cores are used to upgrade the true stars of the game, your personal core bots, Mac, Seth, and Duncan. Recore's human characters pale in comparison to these amazing robots, as they instantly made us fall in love with them. Mac, Joel's faithful robot dog, is fiercely loyal and acts just like the most perfect version of any canine. Each of the core bots have unique traits that are required to make it through the adventure, and Mac can sniff for items under the ground that prove useful for progression. Duncan is a gorilla-type robot who can clear rocks with a few super strong punches, while Seth is a special case as he actually helps enhance the game's already stellar gameplay. Seth is a spider-type robot who has a timid nature, but he can also grind on certain sections that let you get to places you've never been before. The spectacle of platforming is elevated as you fling yourself up in the air, perform a double jump into an air dash, and just barely make it to your next grinding section.
Give me a lift! Whoa! We made it!
Your core bots and your gun level up as you use them in combat, which makes them hit harder, have more defense, as well as more energy for devastating lethal moves. Unlocked early on, lethal moves use that bot's color to unleash an attack of that nature on the enemy and help break their shields even further, allowing for a very satisfying dynamic during combat. The bot's growth is not limited to experience, however, as you can use the materials and cores dropped by enemies to create new parts for a loadout. Later on, you can even switch which core is in what frame for a lot more diversity. Although the bots may be the best part of the game, this is also where my list of problems begin with Recore. Mac, Seth, and Duncan can be used in pairs, however to switch which pair you have, you'll have to talk to another robot named Violet. Violet handles both fast travel and robot choice, and is located in various locations, which makes this pretty easy. But often we found ourselves out in the wild and bumped into something that needed a bot not in our possession. This caused what required about 5 minutes of backtracking to get back to a fast travel location, switch our pair, and make it back. This problem is compounded once you get the 4th frame, which allows you to fly. Since you have only 3 cores, you have to switch one of them into the frame to get it going. However, unlike swapping your pair, your home base's workbench is the only area you can do this in. Little things like this really show the developers had a great idea but neglected to optimize it for the player. Other small quality of life qualms played the game, tarnishing an otherwise great experience. Each time you zone into any area, your home base included, you're greeted with a loading screen, an unskippable animation, or a combination of the two. It makes changing frames or doing anything at least a minute longer than it needs to be. For example, upgrading your robot takes far longer than it should, as you have to hold down the button for the whole duration, with the process not really speeding up until the very end. It slowed an otherwise well-paced experience down to a crawl as we stared at the screen in annoyance. The pacing is interrupted yet again in the climax of the adventure. The prismatic orbs you've been collecting up until that point have been giving access to different story dungeons, and the requirements were rather low. The first story dungeon needed just 1, and the dungeons right before the final need about 20. As you enter the final area, however, this requirement jumps up to 25, 30, 35, 40, and 45 for each floor of the area.
Uh-oh. I guess someone doesn't want us going to the tower.
So even though the game guided you to this point very quickly, you're meant to go and do the optional dungeons to get enough to come back. They make a big point of the dungeons being completely optional early on, so most players will neglect them if they're looking to complete just the story. It wouldn't be that bad, but the 5 areas that compose the final challenge do not give any prismatic orbs at all, meaning if you didn't have 45 before you entered, you've got a good 4 to 5 hours to gain enough orbs to complete the game. These complaints aside, Recore has accomplished something that not many have in years. Comcept had a major misstep with their platformer Mighty No. 9, however their joint venture with Armarture showed the games they are really capable of making. Recore is the best example of skill-based platforming we've played in recent memory, and although pacing may have been thrown off in the end, we wouldn't mind spelunking in the world of Far Eden once again. It's for this reason we give Recore a out of 10. Thanks for watching the Bombchu review for Recore. If you liked what you saw, why not hit the subscribe button for more reviews like this and other videos. Also, feel free to leave a comment below with any spoiler-free experiences for this game, or any questions you'd like to ask about Recore or anything else really. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.